So it's been a while since y'all have seen this plant, but if you're an OG subscriber, I know it doesn't look great, but I'm really proud of how well my zebra plant is coming along these days. It has so many more leaves. Hey, what's up you guys? I'm Caitlin from Leave Me Alone Plants, and today I'm going to be doing a video that I have promised I would do for quite a while now, and that is how to use and set up Hydrospikes for your houseplants. Now, Hydrospikes are like the trademark name of these, I believe, but they're sold under all types of brands on Amazon and elsewhere nowadays, so really they're all the same thing. Basically it is just this little ceramic spike with this plastic tubing connected to the end, and then this other ceramic piece that you put into a vessel of water. Now these basically are a self-watering system for your plants and are great if you're, for example, if you're going out of town on vacation, or if you have a diva-like plant like this zebra plant, or perhaps a peace lily that requires a very constant moisture, or if you're just kind of like a lazy waterer like myself, then these are a really great option to basically make sure that you don't miss any waterings for your plant and that they stay looking happy and healthy. So if you are curious how to set these up for the first time, or if you're just curious about them in general, then keep on watching and we're gonna get into it right now. So you may be sitting there thinking to yourself, Caitlin, how does this sorcery work? How is this magic ceramic spike going to prevent me from killing my plants? Well, I'm so glad that you asked. These spikes happen to work through capillary action. That felt like a very scientific word, so I had to put my lab coat on, but we can take it off now. Basically what that means is as the soil starts to dry out and there's a lower concentration of water in that soil than there is in the ceramic portion of the spike, basically is going to take that area of high concentration of water to an area of lower concentration of water and even that out. So it is more of an equilibrium. Would that be the right word to use here? I'm not really sure. I'm only a fake scientist, just so we're all on the same page here. And one caveat that you may have noticed if you started looking into these already is that they do tend to get pretty low reviews on Amazon. And honestly, I'm going to tell you that the first time that I used these, they actually didn't work for me. So what I really highly recommend is if you are planning on going out of town and using these as a way to keep your plants watered while you're gone, do a test run the week before and just make sure that you have these set up right so that you don't run into an unfortunate situation where they don't water your plants, because obviously that would not be good. With that said, once you do have these squared away and working correctly, they are literally a lifesaver. Again, especially if you're somebody like me who tends to be like an underwaterer or really forgetful, they basically are your insurance policy to make sure that your soil is not going to dry out too much. So chances are when you get these, they are going to come wound up like so. Mine had like a little rubber band on them, but basically they're going to look like that. Of course, take the rubber band off, unwind them a little bit. You can kind of just stretch out this tubing to make sure that it is fully, I guess, good to go. So this next step is optional. Some people swear that you have to do this. Personally, I find it doesn't make a difference, which is basically taking these and soaking them in water for like an hour first, just so that the ceramic can become completely saturated ahead of time. Again, I've done it and I've not done it, and honestly, I don't notice a difference. So to me, don't waste your time, but if it makes you feel better, then go ahead and soak them for an hour first. Basically, you just dunk the whole thing in there and let them, do their thing. From there, once your things are all soaked or not soaked, depending on your preference, you are going to pop the cap off, and it makes a very satisfying sound that I enjoy. Don't you agree? Okay, so now that this is popped off,
when I popped off,
damn it, I definitely should have done this by my sink. Basically what you're going to want to do is fill this cone up with water to the top. I am definitely going to spill some water here, so let's do it over the plant. Oh, this is actually going so well. I didn't spill any water, believe it or not. So, okay, we've got this guy filled up. From here, just pop your cap back on, and we are good to go. Next part, pretty obvious. You are just going to want to stick this in the soil. I like to put it as close to the base of my plant as possible. However, do just be careful when you're putting it in there. Try not to like disturb the roots too much. Like if you're jamming it in there and you're hearing like cracking and snapping of the roots, maybe like pull it back a little bit, but you're gonna want to get that ceramic portion all the way in there real nice and good. Okay, so now we have our tubing and we have this other ceramic part hanging out in the open out here. You are going to want to get yourself a vessel of water. I have this AZ5C recycled orange juice container that I'm using. You can use whatever you want. This is just what I had laying around From here, you are simply going to take your tubing and place it all as far down in there as need be. Of course, making sure that the bottom ceramic portion is touching some portion of the water. The more the merrier, the more water that it has access to, the longer that it will be able to provide water to your plant. One thing I forgot to mention is using the right amount of Hydrospikes for the size pot that you have. This one is just a 6-inch pot here. I find one is perfectly acceptable for 6 inches. Anything larger than that, I would probably add a second spike or more if it's a really large pot. So just use your best judgment, play around with it. If you start out with one and you find out that it's not enough, you can always add more. Personally for me, I don't really like using these Hydrospikes for plants in a smaller than 6-inch pot. I just feel like there's not enough room for the spike and like the plants and the plant's roots and the plant's stem. So that's just my personal preference. I guess it really depends on the specific plant and yeah. Now the specific Hydrospikes that I have, these little ceramic pieces at the end are kind of pre-weighted, but if the ones that you have you find are kind of floating to the top, you can actually buy like the little fishing lure weights and attach those onto there so that it stays stuck down to the bottom of your vessel. The final thing you're going to want to take into consideration while you're placing this vessel of water and the plant is just like how high they are in relationship to each other. So the recommended way to put these plants is to have this vessel be slightly lower than where your plant is. That's basically going to ensure that it doesn't get too heavily watered. So that can be as easy as putting this plant like on top of a book or something like that. Conversely, if you have a plant like this zebra plant that really is quite thirsty and likes a lot of water, you can also consider doing something like this where you have the vessel a little bit higher than the plant, and basically that is going to mean that your plant is getting more water, staying more moist throughout the day, and yeah, it's really just preference based on the plant that you have specifically. Now finally, just a couple troubleshooting points that you will want to keep in mind with these Hydrospikes. I just have this plant in a normal soil medium, but if you have it something like in sphagnum moss, or I never know what these things are called. Do you pronounce it Leica? I'm not really sure. The little clay balls, you guys know what I'm talking about. If you have something like that that's going to be a lot airier, these Hydrospikes are not going to work in that. They basically need to have something compressed around it for that capillary action to work, so just keep that in mind. Now also, how we filled up that reservoir inside the spike at the beginning of this video, say that you let this go a long time and that completely drains through all this water, just be sure to check that your that water reservoir inside the spike itself did not dry out, because if it did, it is going to not be able to work through capillary action and it is going to stop watering your plants, which of course is not going to be a good thing. Finally, if the vessel of water that you're using is clear like mine and you have it placed somewhere like outside or by a bright windowsill, just be sure to keep an eye on it over time that it isn't developing like algae inside or any nastiness like that. Obviously that would not be good, so just keep an eye on it and make sure that everything is under control there. So that is basically how you are going to want to set up your Hydrospikes, how you are going to keep them going in the long run, and basically everything I think you need to know. But if you have questions that I did not address in this video, please drop them in the comment section down below. I will be more than happy to answer your questions. If you learned something new today and you thought that Hydrospikes are awesome and cool, like this video, I will drop them down below if you are interested in purchasing them. Finally, if you made it all the way to the end of this video, you learned something about Hydrospikes, you are going to save your plants. I mean, I at least think that that's worth hitting the subscribe button if you haven't already, so I guess consider doing that. Thank you guys so much for sticking around with me until the end, and I hope to see you in the next video.